The Nintendo versus Pocket Pair lawsuit situation has, no pun intended, evolved further, and it raises more questions that I do think need answering. To quickly catch you up in case you don't know, Nintendo is suing Palworld not because of creature designs, but gameplay mechanics. The two major problems Nintendo has with Palworld is that the game captures their pals with Pokemon like balls, and the other one was how Palworld allows players to transfer themselves from ground to air via riding their pals around. These two gameplay mechanics in Nintendo's eyes were too similar to their Pokemon brand and therefore led to Nintendo suing them. Since then, it's gotten pretty bloody, nebulous, and annoying how hell-bent Nintendo has become in order to sue Palworld into utter oblivion. But this then begs the question people keep asking, which is, what happens if and when Nintendo wins this? But what could happen if Palworld wins this instead? Well, here's the thing, guys. If Nintendo wins this lawsuit, it's not going to stop at Palworld, and Nintendo might have the power then to encroach their influence further to censor and remove other games that take inspiration from their catalog of games. And if you enjoy the content, by the way, consider liking the video, commenting, and even subscribing. It helps out big time. Seriously, thank you. But anyways, the article that made me want to make this video comes from Screen Rant, and it's titled, "No matter who wins the Nintendo Palworld lawsuit, we lose." Screen Rant makes a good case where they say this: Nintendo suing Palworld has been a big talking point in gaming for a while, and it isn't a good situation for either company. For Pocket Pair, it's unknown if it will be able to continue supporting Palworld if it loses the lawsuit. For Nintendo, this suggests an inability to handle healthy competition, and with the latest news about the lawsuit, it appears Nintendo is becoming increasingly desperate. Firstly, it has been confirmed via Nintendo's lawsuit that if they win against Palworld, they don't just want changes to the game, they want it erased completely and pulled from all shelves. That's digital too. So the claim that Nintendo doesn't want healthy competition is 100% right, because that is absolutely true. They want to be the only people allowed to make games that are close to what they've made in the past. Which is not exactly how the whole video game industry thing works, since games that do well tend to always influence future games, hence the whole, trends thing. Battle Royales got popular, so more showed up. Open world games became popular, now everything is pretty much open world. From Software made Demon's Souls, and now go look at how many other games exist that adhere to the Souls-like philosophy. But From Software, unlike Nintendo, isn't censoring their competition. Instead, they just allow it to exist because I know this is crazy for Nintendo to understand. But if competition exists, it not only boosts player counts, but increases interest within those niches. So actually, Palworld being healthy and selling a lot shows that people like playing these monster capturing games quite a bit, which would then actually be a boon to Nintendo specifically in the future when they make their Pokemon games. But this whole situation makes total sense for Nintendo and Game Freak to do, since Pokemon has not really, despite evolution being a key part of their series, a franchise that actually evolves much between generations. Pokemon is, come on everybody, can I be honest here? It's pretty lazy, isn't it? It is the same thing over and over. Pokemon is to monster capturing games what FIFA is to soccer, or like NBA 2K for basketball even. These sorts of games come out every single year almost, with slight variations, but the core gameplay loops and design philosophies stay almost identical between games, yet despite this, people buy them anyways by the millions. So Nintendo doing what they're doing to Palworld is for a very simple reason. Not only do they not want competition, they don't want the designs within these games to evolve either. Because if they did, then Nintendo would actually have to put more effort than the bare minimum when making their Pokemon games, and that just sounds like actual work for Nintendo and Game Freak, so we can't have that, can we? Instead, it's just better to use the bloated $1 billion they have to force lawmakers to allow them to just erase Palworld instead. Because the simple fact the game exists is pretty much a big FU to Nintendo's entire public image in their eyes. But Screen Rant brings up another good point, as they said here. Still, with all the resources at its disposal and given the surprising nature of this update in the Palworld lawsuit, it wouldn't be entirely surprising if Nintendo were to win the lawsuit. If it did, it would be the worst case scenario. It would give Nintendo and the Pokemon Company an even tighter stranglehold on any kind of game like Pokemon, and something like Temtem could be next. Yeah, so let's talk about that Temtem thing. In case you don't know, it's another monster capturing game that's actually made by Spanish developers. Somehow, they haven't been sued into the Shadow Realm yet, but if Nintendo successfully buries Palworld, yeah, you can bet they'll also set their eyes on Temtem next. But it's not just Temtem. This lawsuit has far more concerning reaching things as well. For example, in case you don't know, there's actually another game coming out called Animo. I think I said that right, my bad if I didn't. But as you can see on screen, this game also looks a lot like Pokemon quite a bit. But if you ask me, Animo looks like what Pokemon should look like at this point in its life cycle, but again, that would mean that Nintendo would have to try, which is crazy talk to them, I guess. But just one look at Animo, and it has everything Nintendo needs to curb stomp it and also sue it into the far reaches of deep space once it's done tearing Palworld apart. Especially because, as you're seeing, Animo also captures its creatures with what is clearly a ball-like capturing mechanic too. Yeah, the same exact patent infringement idea that Nintendo is suing Palworld over literally right now. Honestly, the more I look at Animo, all I can think is, wow, this looks great, but also, I'm just counting the days until Nintendo inevitably sends their lawyers to seppuku their whole operation over there too. And I'm really not the only one. Game Rant had an article recently titled, Animo is playing with the same fire as Palworld, and yeah, I mean, they're right. This is 100% going to be another game that Nintendo inevitably does try to sue once they're done with Palworld. As they say here, Animo is treading dangerous waters, and realistically, Nintendo does keep living up to their moniker of being one of this industry's most annoying companies when it comes to trends or ideas getting out. Since back in May 2025, Nintendo, amidst their lawsuit, did force Palworld to remove their capture mechanic using balls. And they also removed flying on PALs instead, replacing this idea with gliders so Nintendo would stop crying like babies about it. But since games like Temtem have not yet been sued by Nintendo despite existing prior to Palworld, it does make you wonder how, within its first year of release, not even that Pocket Pair and Palworld got sued by Nintendo, but Temtem is just, I guess, left alone to exist. But Game Rant, as they say here, it might be because Temtem didn't become a viral sensation the same way that Palworld did. And what this really is about is not the capturing mechanic or riding of creatures in games that cause this. What it's really about is that Nintendo sees Palworld as direct competition to its crown, and that is the sole reason why it must not be allowed to exist in their eyes. This is why it's imperative that Palworld wins their lawsuit against Nintendo, if you ask me. Because if they don't, it will solidify Pokemon and Nintendo as the de facto monster capturing juggernauts of the world forevermore. And it will also stifle competition and cause an industry that's already struggling to try new ideas to have to now further censor themselves, or Nintendo will just crush them too. Animo, at least, allows you to control your actual monsters in game, which Nintendo doesn't necessarily do in their mainline series. Unless, I guess, if you count when you're surfing on water, maybe. But Nintendo being who they are, it wouldn't really surprise me if they inevitably sue Animo as well for having a ball to capture monsters in it as a mechanic, or they go further and state that Animo allowing you to control monsters is now suddenly too similar to something like Pokemon Mystery Dungeon or whatever else. Honestly, like, what is next? If any of these games add a mode to, like, snap pictures of their creatures, is Nintendo going to also then claim that's another core mechanic that they own somehow, that you can't use cameras to take photos of monsters in a game? I mean, if they want to do that, then they gotta sue Yakuza, or I guess Like a Dragon as it's known now, since they got a mini game as well, where you can take photos of creeps alongside the railway in Hawaii in-game too then. Is that too similar to Pokemon Snap? Like, where do we draw the line here exactly? Plus, if you ask me, Palworld has far more in common with something like Ark Survival Evolved or even Monster Hunter with how the battles against the more powerful pals play out. Because you're in a big arena, there's like a giant monster in front of you, you fight it, you all work together, and once you defeat it, yeah, that's Monster Hunter pretty much, not really Pokemon. Yet Capcom isn't exactly suing Palworld because Capcom is at least confident in knowing that they can make a great game, despite the competition, which honestly, I don't think Nintendo does. As this post on Twitter said, it's no wonder that Nintendo is suing Palworld because look at what they're trying to push onto their player base in order to pay $80 American for it these days. Like, look at this. This is the new Pokemon Legends game. It looks like a bad mobile game spin-off, but it's instead actually the next mainline release for the Nintendo Switch 2, if you can believe it. Again, comparing the gameplay and graphics on offer here to Palworld, and it's no surprise why Nintendo wants to get rid of them. Because Palworld actually feels like an evolution to this tired idea, and Pokemon has been coasting on barely being awake at the steering wheel for years. Like, just take one look at Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes, and you tell me who's really screwing you over these days. These remakes, and I say that with quotation marks around it, just look like Nintendo made this in like a month. And this slot, by the way, is $78 Canadian on Amazon right now. Wow, what a steal. Almost $80 for this piss poor excuse of a remake. Palworld, for example, in Canada retails at $39, almost half the price of that awful Diamond and Pearl remake you just saw. And then putting them side by side, it's night and day in terms of quality, animations, graphical fidelity, and actual innovation. So it's really no wonder why Nintendo wants to destroy Palworld, because they're making better games and charging you half the price for it as well. They even added a massive update to Palworld called Break recently, and how much does that cost? Oh, that's right, it's actually entirely free. Nintendo, however, they would never do that. Actually, they're still charging you $37 for the Pokemon Sword Expansion Pass on their website right now. Oh yeah, that doesn't even include the base game either. The expansion for the $80 base game from 2019 costs almost identical to the entirety of Palworld as a video game at retail, guys. Like, this needs to be said. Nintendo is completely anti-consumer these days. They have been for a long while, actually. Because tons of companies are going third party, but Nintendo, because they will continue to keep their IPs behind their sole console, in order for any other reason to then just to justify pricing them at ridiculous price points because you can't get these games anywhere else. And Palworld represents everything that Nintendo isn't and doesn't want to become normalized, and that's important. Innovation, better graphics, crossplay between platforms, free expansions and updates, crossover content that is also free in Palworld, and also just, in general, not costing $80 at release, but half, if not that instead. So yeah, of course they want it dead, because Palworld proved that Nintendo is fleecing everybody for years. But it's not just Palworld, because if Nintendo wins this lawsuit, this then opens the gates of oblivion for Nintendo to then sue anyone or anything that remotely reminds them of any of their games. Like, look at Genshin Impact, a game that has made billions of dollars at this point. People have been calling Genshin a Zelda Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom clone for years now. In 2023, the comparisons also deeply disturbed the development team behind Genshin Impact, because the very idea of being accused of ripping off Zelda could warrant Nintendo's attack dogs to suddenly turn heel and start gnashing at Genshin's bits. They were even being accused of this back in 2020 when Genshin was first released. And Genshin, as this Nintendo Life article states, did draw inspiration from Zelda, but it is a totally different game. But this is what I mean. You can't even have grasslands and open environments with reactive physics in your game. Otherwise, not even really Nintendo, but their fans even, will also just swarm you like locusts. And this is why Palworld has to win this. As Screen Rant said in the first article I referenced in this video, as it reads, many games that are somewhat similar to Zelda, like Tunic, could be under threat next. And perhaps Genshin Impact could suffer a lawsuit for using Breath of the Wild climbing mechanics. If Nintendo manages to win the lawsuit against Palworld regarding the infringement of its patents, it could try to kill all competition next. Smaller developers wouldn't have a chance. And this added cautiousness could prevent great games from being made. And it's exactly this. You see, the entire lawsuit of Palworld versus Nintendo does not just implicate the monster capturing genre. It threatens to erase all creativity within the video game space as we know it. Because developers should be allowed to make games that are similar to other games, because that's what genres, and especially subgenres, are meant to be anyways. You can't claim that these games can't exist simply because Nintendo has a similar mechanic within their games too. But if Nintendo wins this, it's not just Palworld that suffers, it's Genshin Impact. It's so many other games out here that are all inspired by the works of Nintendo themselves. It is not illegal to be inspired by the works of others. If this is true, then every single science fiction story then must be deleted besides the first one that was ever published or written. Every medieval fantasy game or book must be also erased because it's just some version of like Lord of the Rings or something else. You can't reasonably enact these draconian lawsuits onto people because they're fans of your work and just want to pay homage or make something that reminds them of your game that, by the way, gave them so much joy that they wanted to make a game like yours. These people are fans of Pokemon. Yeah, obviously, look at Palworld, but you can't swing your meat around like Nintendo's trying to do and just think you can get away with it. Like, for God's sakes, did you know that Nintendo once tried to sue a Costa Rican supermarket? Because they used the name Super Mario for their store? Nintendo lost that lawsuit, by the way, because the super in the Super Mario name within this context wasn't even about the video game. It was called Super because supermarkets in Costa Rica add super to their name because they're supermarkets, obviously. And if they weren't supermarkets, then they don't use super in their name. Didn't matter to Nintendo, though, of course. They still did try to sue this random supermarket in the middle of Costa Rica for some, because if you even try basically to even sound like anything or pay any homage or any kind of whatever else, no matter the context, Nintendo never takes it as a flattering gesture. They see everyone who isn't them as a potential threat. And that isn't more clear than it is these days when it comes to how Nintendo operates and enforces their copyrights and their laws. Because make no mistake, if Nintendo could, they would absolutely kill the entire video game industry to become the sole provider of video games and be like the king of everything. As Screen Rant says here, no matter who wins the lawsuit, the fans lose. And yes, they're right. As they say here, had the lawsuit been about the designs behind the pals and their similarity to Pokemon, it probably wouldn't feel as damaging. Still, with Nintendo filing the lawsuit based on patent infringement and mechanics, it sends a worrying message to other developers. The future of Palworld has been uncertain since the day the lawsuit was filed, and it's hard to look at Pokemon the same way again. And I feel the same way too, because I don't see Pokemon or Nintendo anymore in the same light. I now just see a company that genuinely wants to bury any and all competition down to the DNA if it even remotely threatens their existence or their bottom line. Because if you're a developer right now who is a big fan of Nintendo games, and that's a lot of them by the way, and maybe you want to make your own Pokemon-like game, now you're probably going to think twice about doing that. Because what if you put all of the years, all that money and manpower into making this really cool Pokemon-like game? Not to copy Nintendo, but more as like a celebration for fans of Pokemon to enjoy too. You're not stepping on their toes. You know you can't beat Pokemon. You just wanted to make a cool game. And instead of making this fun, positive game for people to enjoy, Nintendo takes one look at it, and instead of going, oh, thanks for being inspired by us, they go, nope, we're gonna slap you with a cease and desist and threaten to sue you into debt until you wither away, or we'll just erase you. Like, this just stifles competition and innovation. And whether it's Palworld, Animo, Temtem, or even Genshin Impact now, it's all the same thing. Nintendo as a company does not want competition. They don't want innovation. And they don't want anyone to even now think of making a game even an iota close to what they've done in the past. By the way, Demon's Souls was inspired by Zelda 2. Is Nintendo now going to sue From Software next? If Nintendo wins, will they attack Genshin Impact and then tell them to fix their visual style, their entire open world zones, the reactivity of the elements, or I don't know, their climbing mechanics even? Because why? Nintendo also suddenly owns the rights to having a stamina bar when you climb? Like, are we being serious here? Like I said, I do hope that Nintendo just loses all of this. Because it will not only be a massive blow to their ego, which would be funny, but it will hopefully stop them from trying to literally sue every single person pretty much that just breathes at this point. But mark my words, guys. If Nintendo wins this lawsuit, Palworld will be erased from existence. Probably even taken away from you even if you bought the game, which then brings in that whole stop killing and censoring games talk into the equation now as well. And Nintendo will eventually, mark my words, come for stuff like Genshin Impact and more next if they win this. Until really, the only way you can capture monsters is through the forced milquetoast slop that Nintendo decides to feed you. And the only way you're going to enjoy a Zelda-like adventure game will be where you play as Link for the 50th time again as he chases Zelda and fights Ganondorf for the 100th time. Oh joy! I can't wait for the same games over and over again with slight variations for the rest of time and space from Nintendo, while also costing $80 American, which is like $110 Canadian or something now. Although at least it is a good sign that Nintendo did change their patents descriptions during this ongoing lawsuit. Because it does mean that they know that they are in the wrong here and that what they've presented is not legally strong enough to truly destroy Palworld. And I do hope when Nintendo loses that Pocket Pair's next Palworld sequel ends up being so amazing, so ball-bustingly incredible in every single way, like the graphics, the gameplay, the character customization, the free expansions, all of it, that it completely destroys Pokemon's reputation even further. If not for any other reason than to simply make the suits at Nintendo sweat and learn to stop being so draconian like they usually are with literally everything else. But what do you think about all of this? Who will win the lawsuit? What do you think about companies pushing this patent nonsense when it comes to game mechanics on others? And who do you think will win in the end? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching. Subscribe to keep on to date on a whole lot of nonsensical things, and I will see you next time.